didn't think it was going to be that long.
Am I ready? Welcome, Governor Kasich. We're glad you could make it, as the big sign out front tells you. I want to thank everyone that has taken time out of their busy schedules to come and greet and hear the Governor of the great state of Ohio. This morning, I'd like to introduce Jason Duff. Jason is the owner of this building, and he is the founder of several companies here in Logan County, including ComStore. He has spearheaded millions of dollars in local economic development through commercial real estate and revitalization. Over the past 3 years, Jason and his team have been responsible for the revitalization of 8 historic downtown buildings. Like Governor Kasich, Jason's focus is on rebuilding Main Street, business recruitment, creating jobs, and educating and empowering entrepreneurs. I practiced all morning saying that. I've said it 100 times. Speaking of entrepreneurs, Jason is Entrepreneur of the Year. Jason.
Welcome to Bellefontaine. It is so awesome to have you all here today. As the sign says out front, we're happy that you're here. It is really special that we're in this building and having Governor Kasich be here, because 102 years ago, there was a man named Edward Canby. And Edward Canby was from Bellefontaine, moved to Dayton, and he started manufacturing wooden shoe last. Well, he got this idea from taking a trip over to Ireland. There was a new game that was being developed called golf. So he came back to his little factory in Dayton, Ohio, and started the McGregor Golf Club Company. And then 2 years later, as his industry and his business was blossoming, he also invested and got a business partner that had a patent. And that patent was to develop scales that were used in dry goods stores. And that company was called the Dayton Computing Scale Company, and 2 years later it merged with another company to form IBM. Has anyone heard of IBM? So after his success with IBM, he came back to his hometown, and he used his money to build this iconic building. And over 40 years, it became home to Dee's department store, which many of us have very fond memories. Maybe your first Easter dress came from here, your first set of china, your first suit. It was the heart of the community. And then the building went into distress. The economy changed. And Bellefontaine, lost its railroad integrity. So we had to reinvent ourselves. And we need leaders today that have the mentality to bring in new technology, that understand that what happens here on Main Street really matters. And I'm just going to share a few things that our governor is doing for us in our state.
Let me share it. Coming out, I'm going to make a few comments, a couple hours, and then I've got run a big tour today, so we'll say a few things, and I'd like to take some questions, hear any concerns that you might have. Look, we're doing so much better than we were when I was here in Bellefontaine in the campaign. I think I came up in a bus. Is that right? Yeah, I remember that. It's hard for me to remember that because coming down that river mountain, I crashed into it. No, I didn't. But anyway, it was pretty bad. We were down 350,000 jobs, and now we're up 263,000. And when you think about is, you can gloss over numbers, but just think that if you filled Ohio Stadium 3.5 times, and every person that walked out of the stadium, one after another, walked out and said, I lost my job. Now, 350,000 is probably not an accurate number, because there's probably mostly at least 2 in a family. So we're talking close to 1 million people who have experienced very serious economic hardship. In other words, that's even not a good way to say it. They didn't have any work. They had to go home and tell people, we got to cut back. And, it's terrible when you lose your job. I grew up in a community where I saw people lose their job, because Old McKees Rocks was a place that the wind blew the wrong way, people were out of work, and it was a place where we had no power. And so I'm kind of familiar in a real way with what happens when things get tough for families. So now we went from that 350,000 down to over $250,000. So now we're moving these people back into that stadium. And they're walking back in with the pride and the dignity that they get from getting the job. And it boosts everybody, right? It helps the kids, it helps everybody to be in a position where we're stronger economically. But what's most important about it, it's about kind of our moral purpose. Because I think the Lord created all of us for a purpose, a work, and a dignity that comes with that work. So this has to be and continue to be the most important mission we have. So while we're filling the stadium back up with people who are working, we still have a way to go. I happen to believe, because I don't really like politics very much. You should know that. I don't care about it. It's boring to me. I'm a weird place in my life, being a public servant but not liking politics. I have to tell you that my view is if we do not screw this up somehow, we've only begun to scratch the surface in terms of what Ohio can be. And the reason that that's true is because we have really good people, we have diversity. In other words, we've got big, we've got small, we've got urban, we've got rural, we've got suburban. We're big. We are a big state with 11.5 million people in this state. And there's a lot of people who are so underemployed or not employed that the potential to bring more work in here or to get companies to expand is terrific. It's really a great opportunity for us. And we're diversifying the state. So some of you who are here who remember Woody Hayes, that was a time when it was just agriculture and manufacturing. But today it's agriculture, it's manufacturing, but it's IT, it's health, it's energy, it's financial services, it's logistics. It's all these cool things that add to the changing nature of both agriculture and business. So this is just great. And by having a balanced budget, because many of you won't recall, but if I remind you, you remember, we were way in the hole. We were $8 billion in the hole. It was the largest debt we ever had in the state's history. And we got that fixed. We're no longer in the hole. We're $1.5 billion in the black. We have running a surplus now in a short period of time. And at the same time, we've also cut our taxes. I think it's the largest, check this, Matt, I think it's the largest series of tax cuts in the country, $3 billion worth of tax cuts, helping small businesses, because they're the hirers, reducing the income tax, and it's still too high, and killing the death tax. So somebody who starts a business can pass the business on to their kids, which is the old American tradition. So what we're seeing is balanced budgets, surpluses, tax cuts, economic strength. It's working. It's working here in the state. And I think we can, in regard to this, there's always pressure on public officials to spend public money. The way I look at public money is I think of it as mine. Would I spend this if it was mine? And of course it is mine, part of it is mine. And so I think about it from the standpoint of we just can't throw money at problems or get rid of these surpluses, because this is an insurance company, an insurance policy for us. If you look around the country at other states where they're in the hole, their pension systems are out of whack, they're in debt, companies aren't going to go there. They're not going to go there because uncertainty prevents them from making an investment. When I was chairman of the budget committee in Washington, and we balanced the budget. It was the first time. I was the architect of the balanced budget in 1997. And we had paid down a large amount of the national debt. We had trillions of dollars of surpluses. You don't remember this, do you? But we did this. And I left Washington with a bunch of my pals who helped us get this done. And I got back to Westerville, and one of my buddies saw me, and he said, "John, now that you and your buddies are gone, we're we're going to be back in the hole again before you know it. And I thought, well, that's not possible, because we're trillions of dollars in the black. You have to work to blow that. Well, it's like a blink of an eye and we're back in the hole again. And what it taught me was just changing the numbers without changing the culture doesn't work. It's no different than a family that is spending too much on the credit card bills. It's not enough just to get the monthly bills the right way. It's not enough. You have to change the attitude of the people in the family about how we should conduct ourselves in the future. Well, the same is true with government. And that's why we have to keep doing this. That's why I feel compelled to do this again. Because we're gaining on changing the culture and making sure that the numbers are right and the culture changes. Some of the other things that we've done is we know that education is the key to so much. But the word education doesn't mean anything if, in fact, we're not linking the education with the real world and the job opportunities. And we also need to make sure that while we put more money in education, which we've done, the largest increase in a decade, we also know that we have to hold people accountable. So we passed this thing called the third grade reading guarantee. We want to start working with kids in preschool and kindergarten, and first grade, and second grade, and third grade, so that they can read at a third grade level. And many of these students in the past couldn't read at a third grade level. But we put them in the fourth grade, the fifth grade, the sixth grade, the seventh grade, and guess what happens? They quit. It's like going to another country and not understanding the language. So we now have a third grade reading guarantee, and communities have pulled together to make sure that our kids have these skills. It's critical to learn how to read, because you learn how to read in order to read to learn. And so this is in place. We're bringing vocational education down to the seventh grade now, so that kids who need these skills. We also believe that those kids who are vocational education should have the necessary skills so that if they want to go on to a 2-year or 4-year school, they can do that. And, we just believe that the most important thing going forward is to integrate the business community and you, members of the community, effectively into our schools. And in higher education, we now have incentives where universities are not going to be repaid money for overhead. When they get a student, the student is going to have to either complete courses or graduate for the university to get paid any money. There's nowhere else in America where they're doing this. And this is really terrific. Now that we're stronger economically, it's sort of like when mom and dad get on their feet. It means that more can be done to help the community with their children. And now that the state is stronger, there are things that we can do that we have left undone for a long time. And that is the treatment of people who have mental illness, the people who have drug addictions. We now have the resources to begin to get inside of our communities to deal with these most serious problems. I believe everybody's created in the image of God, and I believe that everybody should have an opportunity to live out their life based on what their purpose was the day they were born. So we have a 360 program going here in the state. Strong economic growth, creating jobs, running surpluses, cutting taxes, and then at the same time making sure that no one gets left behind. And this is a way I think that you run a state, you run a community. Now let me just tell you something that I'm very concerned about. When I was a kid, I could never have imagined one of my classmates walking into my school, pulling out a gun, and trying to shoot as many kids as they could. This is not just an isolated case in America anymore, is it? We see it, it's unbelievable. I mean, it's almost like we can't look at it. It's just so horrible. We know that even in places now like Bellefontaine and the surrounding areas, do you ever think that you would ever imagine people inside of your community doing heroin? Did you ever think, I mean, that was something we saw in movies when we were kids. Then the issue of personal responsibility. The idea that you don't have the right to collect something from somebody else that you ought to be doing to take care of yourself. This is grown. How about the issue of respect? I was never taught to call my next door neighbor by the parent by the first name. I remember it was just a few years ago when the president, he is our president, was making a State of the Union speech, and he said something. One of the congressmen jumped up and said, "You lie. You lied to the president." It's inconceivable to me. We see a lot of this in our society today, chaos and confusion. And some people say, well, there's nothing I can do about it. Well, I think one of the most important missions I have in this job is to figure out how to lower the barriers so that you, people who have been concerned about this chaos, people who hold these values that you were taught as children, those values that are so important to the way we live, I think it's so important that I can give you the mechanism to take back your communities, to transfer these values to people who live in your community. And we have some programs that we're carrying on now to do that. One of which is Start Talking. You can become involved in the war against drugs. We know that if a young person hears the dangers of drugs, there's a 50% less chance they will get on drugs. There's a program under the title StartTalking.com. I want you to go on that website and look at how you can involve yourself with your children, with your grandchildren, with your neighbor's children, because we must win this war against drug abuse. And guess what? We can. We can, but it's not somebody else that's going to win it. You got to win it. We have a program now called Community Connectors. I believe that this community and the surrounding communities ought to be intimately involved in the schools. And let me tell you why this can be so effective. In Cincinnati public schools have a graduation rate of 65%. I want you to think about that for a second. A 65% graduation rate, which means that 35% of the kids who are in the Cincinnati public schools don't get a high school diploma. What do you think that means for them and for us? There is a school inside that system where the business community allows their workers to go in and mentor kids. 1 hour a week for a year. 1 hour a week for a year. The graduation rate inside of that school is 97%. That's what can happen, ma'am, when we get off of our porches and start sticking our nose in somebody else's business, the way you used to be when you were a girl. Am I right? That's exactly right. And we can't wait for government to do it. And we can't wait for somebody else to do it. So we have a program called 3 for 1. Really, it's a Community Connectors program. If you want to start an organization that it takes to get yourself involved in the school, with the students in that school, with the guardians or the parents of that student, with the faith-based community and business to help shape the lives of our children, we will match you 3 for 1. We have set $10 million aside to do this. And I would encourage you to think about it. Because, folks, I think about, we've seen a lot about World War I. We got a guy in here wearing a U.S. Army hat. World War II veteran, right? World War II veteran. He'll tell you unbelievable stories about what it was like. We hear about the Normandy invasion and people getting off barges and getting shot and rushing to the shoreline. Why? To save our country, the essence of our country. We owe them. We owe them to get back involved in our communities to change lives and to transmit those values that this country was built upon. And we're going to help you to do this over the next 4 years, to show the country that we can take matters into our own hands, that we can build a more peaceful, prosperous society where we live. I think it's really cool. Politics is not just about elections, it's about a movement. And we can win this battle. over these values, we can win it. I have no doubt about it, we can win it. But we all have to sign up for the Army. Those who already served in the Army will give you a pass if you want one. But for all the rest of us, we've got to work and fight for the things that we believe in our communities. You know, it's sort of funny that I got back into this stuff when I really didn't want to. And I have found that I have a platform now and a group of people and a staff that can bring about good things. And it's so funny to evolve to where I am now about the need of all of you to use your brains and your voices to maybe help save America. What do you think of that? To help save America. Election. Can you go out and vote and grab all the people you know and go out and vote, please? We need to make sure we have a great turnout. We can't take this election for granted. We know that there's people struggling on the other side, but you just don't take anything for granted in this business of politics. So we need you. I need you to help and bring home the victory, so we can bring about much better things over the next 4 years. So you can give me some polite applause, and I'll take a couple questions, and then I'm You're a local what?
Logan County citizen.
Okay.
And my question is, Mr. Governor, after all these dog and pony shows you put on in your travels, if you leave here today and practice what you preach, is this campaign contribution that I read about. Give it to the mentally ill. They was dealt something they didn't need. Just start today and give it all away. Don't give it to people that don't want to work. I was in business 40 years. You didn't get work or not work. They either want to work or they don't want to work.
Yeah.
And I had 40 employees at one time. Give it away.
Okay, I'm not sure what I'm giving to or what I'm giving away, but let me just speak to the issue of first of all, mental illness. Okay, we promised people, we did, I wasn't there, but there was a promise made to people that we would get them out of the big institutions, and then we would provide for them to be in a place where they could get help. Now, folks, you know, mental illness is like physical illness, except we admit the physical illness, but we don't admit the mental illness, okay? We know that. It's better, but it's not great. We now have the resources in the state to begin to treat people who have mental illness through our local ADAM boards, alcohol, mental health. You have them here right in this county and the surrounding counties. They now have the resources to do much more. And not just for people who are at the low end, but people who have mental illness across the board. And I think it's really important that they get an opportunity to get on their feet. And you know, when you think about the medications today, you can be bipolar and lead a pretty darn good life. If you stay on the medication, you get the treatment, you show up, and you do the things you ought to do. So we are paying attention to them. Now, in the area of welfare, let me just talk about that for a second. We have 11.5 million people. The last time I checked the numbers, we had 132,000 people on general relief. 132,000 out of 11.5 million. That ain't a lot. You would think we had millions who were on general relief. We don't. The last time I checked the number of people that we have on unemployment, 76,000 out of 11.5 million. Now that's a low number, considering what we thought. Now let me talk to you about the lives of these people who are on these programs. You don't want to switch. You don't want to switch. Okay, now let's talk about, you know, just a little bit broadly about what we have when we look at people who are dependent. Guy who's coming in to run what we call welfare transformation, he would estimate that 20% of the people who are on relief will never work. They can't. We know that. We know there are people who will never be able to get up and do this. But we know that there's probably 80% of the people who can. So what do we do about it? Well, number one, this is really, really crazy. Number one, if you're on general relief, food stamps, there's more on food stamps than there are on the general relief. General relief is a payment. But if you are on these programs, you get benefits. For example, you get child care. If you go to work, and many of them are working because you have to work 30 hours a week if you're on these programs. Okay? If you're on these programs, you've got to work 30 hours a week. If we find out you're not working, we take you off. But here's the thing that you need to know. There are people who are the working poor who cannot take a bonus or cannot take a better position because they will lose more in government benefits than they will gain. Okay? That system has to be changed. We need to make sure that people can work their way off, but have a reward for getting in and working hard. Now, here's the other thing. Right now, in many of our welfare departments, when somebody shows up, the person behind the counter gives them food stamps or whatever it is. See you next month. Think of it as an emergency room. Okay? I'm going to the emergency room. We need a hospital in the welfare department. In other words, what's your problem? What can we do to help you? What can we do to get you a job? What is it that you need? And so we are going to go at this in several different directions. Reduce and get rid of the disincentives to success in work. And we have to train these people. And we have to hold them accountable. And the reason is it's a sin not to help somebody who needs help, which is at 20%. But it's equally a sin to continue to give somebody something from somebody else when you need to learn how to help yourself. And so that's I have to tell you, a harshness in the Republican Party doesn't work. Mitt Romney is running against Barack Obama. They ask who's more capable, who's more competent, who can create jobs, blah, blah. Romney wins everything. Then they ask who understands your problem better, Barack Obama or Mitt Romney? And 80% went to Barack Obama. A harshness of them, get them out, cut them off, it doesn't work. Because everybody has challenges and problems in their family. That doesn't mean we're weak or soft. It means let's get to the root of the problem. I said earlier, and I believe this, we're all created in the image of the Lord. If that's true, then we need to make sure that we do our part to make sure everybody has a chance to carry out their purpose. And some need more help than others. Think about this. You grew up in a family where you never saw anybody work. You don't know how to set an alarm clock. You don't know how to get up and go to work 3 days in a row. Now, we can say forget them, but I'm not going to say that, folks. I'm going to say we're going to hold you accountable, we're going to train you, we're going to get you up on your feet. And that's Here's what the House of Representatives is going to have some hearings, and I welcome those hearings. What we did in the last mini budget that we had is, first of all, I'm for higher standards. I assume you're for higher standards too. But what we don't want to do is somebody else setting the curriculum to get to those high standards. And that is the case in our state. Local school boards set the curriculum to meet the higher standards. Let me repeat that. Washington doesn't set it. Columbus doesn't set it. The local school board sets it, and it's been reaffirmed in the law. And we want parents, and it's provided for in the law, to become advisors to the school board in making sure the curriculum in math and English reflects what we want in our school at the local level. Now, there's a test that comes through that tries to analyze how these kids are doing. we have delayed the impact of that test for a year. If we find out it is a bad test, a stupid test, or whatever, we'll just get rid of the test, and we'll figure something else out. But I want to make sure our goal ultimately is high standards for our kids, because American students are not competing worldwide very effectively. High standards, and the way to meet those high standards determined by local school boards. That's what we need to do. We will keep listening to this. If I think this is sliding away, there will be no common core of history. We're not going to do that. The only thing we are focused on is math and English. And again, the local school board will decide how we get to that place. But we do need to have higher standards. Let me tell you one of the things we need, because I'm not sure I'm so clear about this. We have people, how many small business people in here? Oh, okay. Can't find employees. Not trained. I need you in the school. I need you to find out what's teaching them in there. Let me just give you a little story. Anybody ever been to McConnellsville, Ohio? No, you haven't had that many people in McConnellsville. Well, just so you know, you must have relatives down there. Let me tell you where it is. It's 30 minutes from Zanesville, and it's 40 minutes from Marietta. It's on the river, it's poor, it's rural, okay? We have one of 20 plants that is owned by an Austrian company called NEMA. Of the 20 plants worldwide, the most modern plant in the world is located in McConnellsville, Ohio. It's just shocking, right? That we're getting these foreign governments and foreign business leaders to invest in our state. So I said to them, what's your biggest problem? Workforce. I said, okay, so I have these two legislators sitting in there. I said, how many times have you been in the schools telling the school teachers, officials, principals, superintendent about NEMA? Now, what does NEMA do? They make gears. Where do the gears go? Some of the gears go into Formula One race cars. This is not some, putting it in a junkyard somewhere. This is a top end. They put some of their gears in nuclear power plants. So you can see that this would be an exciting kid for a young man or a young woman to want to get a job in NEMA. Okay? What is the school doing to, first of all, tell the students about this? What are the schools doing here about telling the students about Honda, about the supercar? Do they have them out there? Maybe they do. Maybe they do. But we have to find out what our students' passions are, and we have to guide them in such a way that their passions are met so they can get a job. We have a disconnect in America, not just in Ohio, in America, between the jobs that are available and the people who have been trained. So we need to fully integrate the real world of a small businessman or a big company like Honda, so that our schools can have a mission to not only to educate our students, but to find their passions and to get them ready to take a job. This requires a lot of flexibility, and frankly, it requires the community to demand this of our schools. And that's something else that we're going to need to work on, and that's that 3-for-1 program. You want to create a program to involve this small businessman and maybe one of your churches and one of the schools here and a parent and a student. We'll help you. We will help you with this. So this is critical to us. What do you think?
We've been trying to do it for years.
And it's hard to lower the barrier to get in there. So what we're working on now are the ways in which we can lower the barrier so that you can get in there and provide the incentive for people to respond in a positive way. Can't give up on this. But we're focused on it now. You wouldn't do this alone if you tried to do it, right? You're not alone anymore. And this would this would result in the most exciting type of education that we can have. And I'll tell you another thing we need in schools. We need really good guidance counselors. And we need guidance counselors whose job is not just to monitor the gym class. We need guidance counselors. Way back, sir.
Superintendent, the local career center
Ray, you love the Career Center.
And you just described career technical education. And so, and we thank you for the support that you've given to CTE and moving it down to the 7th and 8th grade level. My only comment question would be emphasizing career readiness with multiple exit points. Not necessarily just, there's a lot of emphasis still on college and career readiness. Career readiness with multiple exit points, whether that's a high school diploma with certifications, an associate's degree, a bachelor's degree, and all of that talent can be used right here.
You know, I want you to call Dick Ross, just tell him what you said. You know, he runs our superintendent of schools. You're completely right. One thing we don't want to do is we don't want to pigeonhole anybody. We want to give them multiple exit points and multiple opportunities. So if you are going to go into electronics when you're in the 10th or 11th grade, because frankly, with some of these kids, if they're not in electronics, they're dropping out of school. We want to make sure they also have the basic skills that allow them to go to the 2-year school, the 4-year school. And the other thing we have to realize, let me just tell you one last thing. You tell me I gotta go, but I just gotta tell you this. When I was a kid, people worked in the chemical plant, the steel mill, blue collar, I don't know, driving the truck or repairing stuff, and they made enough money to support a decent middle class lifestyle. Those jobs, many of them, not all of them, but many of them have left. Now, we can get some of those jobs back because you have rising wages in Asia, you have high transportation costs, and we have better productivity than we've ever had. What do I mean by all that? You see, we are having a turning of the economy now. It doesn't mean that there is not a place for those workers. But what it does mean is that those workers are going to have to acquire skills in a different way. If you go and work in a manufacturing plant today, you need to know how to use a computer. I was in this warehouse the other day. This is the coolest thing I've seen in a long time. Besides the eagle I made the other day. This is very cool. In this warehouse, they bring these products in. When they bring the stuff into the warehouse, they put a code on them. And then they move them and they stack them on a giant warehouse. People ride in lift trucks. And whenever that product is to be shipped, they have a code reader on their lift truck. And they drive around in the warehouse, and when the code matches the code, the lift will get to where it is, and it will raise, and it will take the product, and it will ship it. Now, they have different people to do the coding. Sometimes people do the coding, sometimes people drive a lift truck, but you can see it involves information technology. We have to have lifelong learning in America. Lifelong. We have to make sure that the regular schools are not hesitant to send a kid who should be in a vocational school there because they're afraid they're going to lose money. We need to fix that.